Okay, Rabbi, so welcome tonight. Last time we talked about the issues of the day, right? The matters that were current events. Now we're going to talk about something a little bit more lofty, a little bit more elevated, right? But it's all connected actually. You know why? Because we talked on Tuesday night about the issue of Shabbat, right? Keeping the meals of Shabbat and how that protects you. So now we're going to talk also about Shabbat. We're going to continue talking about Shabbat. Why is that? Because the Chazal tell us that the source of all bracha, of all blessing, comes from Shabbat. Whatever a person does on Shabbat, that's what he has all the week after that. Following, right? That's what it is. The whole following week comes from whatever he did on Shabbat. If he kept Shabbat good, he did the meals, he did everything good, he kept the laws of Shabbat and everything, the whole week is going to be bright and shiny and beautiful, blessing, parnasah, good income, everything good. If a person doesn't keep Shabbat so good, that also is going to reflect on the remainder of the week as well, right? Because you know why? Because Shabbat, it's not like the other days of the week. You know what the difference is? The Zohar Kadosh tells us something very powerful about Shabbat. You know what it tells us? That the rest of the days of the week, the forces of evil are working. They're operating. That's the way it is. They operate the rest of the days of the week. On Shabbat, they do not operate. They're on rest. They have a leave. You know what I mean? So what does that mean? On Shabbat night, when a person comes the night of Shabbat, the night is where the forces of evil propagate more, become more powerful. The night is actually, right? The time. But when it comes to Shabbat night, not so. Right? On Shabbat, the forces of evil are subdued, and therefore a person has total holiness and clarity on Shabbat. The clarity and holiness is very, very pure. No mixture over there of dirtiness, of filth, right? Spiritual filth. Everything on Shabbat is clean.
No joking with the demons.
So therefore, it's a very okay, you can say that, yes.
That, right?
So it's a very proper time to absorb the forces of blessing at that time, because they're not being hindered by the forces of evil. They're coming straight at you, with no deviations. So therefore, if a person knows how to absorb those rays of holiness on Shabbat, then accompanies him the whole week after. That's the whole idea. You know what I mean? So this is a very powerful thing. This is not a small matter. It applies to spiritual things, the blessing. It also applies to physical as well. Everything, all the blessing comes from Shabbat. And this is the reason why, right, a person is not allowed to do the forbidden labors on Shabbat. We have 39 forbidden labors. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Those 39 forbidden labors, where do we learn them from? Where do they come from? The sky? Actually, if you look in the Torah, right, look in the Bible, 5 books of Moses there, these labors are not written there, what they are. So where does it come from? The sky came, huh? Right? The only thing we find in the Shabbat, by the way, is one thing, that you're not allowed to light a fire. That's what we find in the Bible. To light a fire is forbidden. All the other forbidden labors, which are just as severe as this one, are not written in the Torah. So where are they written? They actually come from the from the Mishkan, from the tabernacle that they built in the wilderness. All the labors that were done over there for the building of the Mishkan, for the maintenance of the Mishkan on a daily basis, all those labors are forbidden on Shabbat. That's where we learn it from. Right? We get that from the Talmud. We have a tradition that comes, oral tradition that comes from Har Sinai. So all these labors, if a person does any one of them, what happens is that he changes Shabbat. He makes a change. He turns it, right? He takes away the blessing of Shabbat, nullifies it, changes it, and therefore he doesn't get the blessing. You understand? This is the problem.
What if something's necessary? What if something's necessary that you're in a place where you need a fire to keep warm, or you'll freeze?
Right. So we have solutions for all these things, right? We have, all of us are living with heat, right? We have heat, Baruch Hashem. We have heat on Shabbat. We have heat on weekdays. How is that? Because we light the fire before Shabbat and it goes on, or we have a thermostat that does it automatically, right? We don't touch it. It goes by itself. This is the idea. You know what I mean? So we have ways to deal with these questions. Believe me, we have ways to deal with that. That's not a problem. A person starts something before Shabbat, it goes by itself. Fantastic, no problem with that.
Mark, I think is referring to when he moves to New Hampshire.
Yeah, camping in the woods or whatever. So you have
right.
a fire.
Oh, okay. Camping is a little bit different, right? So the truth is, it's not recommended to go camping on Shabbat. To be honest with you, you know why? Because a person should be at home where there's light and beauty, and the beauty of his home, with a family, everything should be nice setting. Because if a person goes out in the woods on Shabbat, that means all his week will be like, in the woods. You know what I mean? As if to say, In other words, not very comfortable, right? Not very comfortable, not right. It's a symbol of the whole week to come. So you don't want to be outdoors, right? You don't want to be in the camping at that time, because then you're going to be all week like that. Like in exile, right? In exile, right? That's the whole idea. You know what I mean? So therefore, right? These 39 labors that we have, they come from the Mishkan. Where do we learn them from? From the Mishkan, from the temple over that they had in the desert. Whatever they did over there. All the other things that people do, we don't call that a labor. Only those things are called labors. This is the idea. But nevertheless, right? I want to explain to you, just before we get into the details about this, I want to explain to you one thing. There's a book called Sharei Kedusha, right? Which of Rav Chaim Vital. Who was Rav Chaim Vital? Rav Chaim Vital was the main Talmid, disciple of the Arizal, right? Who was a great Mekubal of the last 500 years. He was a great Mekubal, the Kabbalist. Where did these people live? They lived actually right in Eretz Israel. They met up over there. They met up over there in Eretz Israel. And that's where they lived over there. And they got together, right? And they made like a group of scholars together, learning together, studying together. You know where this was? In the holy city of Tzfat, in the north. Right? They were not in Jerusalem at that time. They were not allowed to go there for some reason or whatever. There's a whole story behind that. But the point is, right, they were in the north, in Tzfat. And there's a long history about what happened over there. A lot of things transpired over there. But anyway, right, the Rav Chaim Vital writes in his book, Sharei Kedusha, what happens to a person also in his body when a person does one of the forbidden labors on Shabbat, right? He does one of the forbidden labors. What happens to him? So you know what happens, right? That there are, as you know, 248 limbs in the body, corresponding to the positive mitzvot that we have, right? In the Torah. Every mitzvah corresponds to a certain limb in the body, right? This is the way it is. So what happens is, right, that when a person doesn't do one of the mitzvot of the Torah, that limb which corresponds to that mitzvah gets sick, because it doesn't get the nourishment that it needs. And this is why people get sick, they go to hospital because of this reason, that reason. They don't realize, right, that it has to do with this, that mitzvah that corresponds to that limb, they're not really doing it so good, whatever, some reason, and therefore, right, they get sick. We're not talking about, by the way, people who die of old age, because that's something else, right? Everybody dies in the end. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a person who should be really healthy at his age. He shouldn't, but he's getting sick because of different reasons. Not because he's old. He's not old. Getting sick because that limb has a problem there. Needs to be fixed up. So says the Talmid of the Arizal, Rav Chaim Vital, that each one of those mitzvot, as we said, corresponds to a certain limb in the body, and if you do it, it keeps it good, healthy. It gets the nourishment that it needs. You don't keep it, it gets sick, that limb. But look how that's talking about the other mitzvot, the rest of the mitzvot. But when it comes to the mitzvah of Shabbat, the labors of Shabbat, that's a different story altogether, right? And this, by the way, corresponds also to the halakha. You know what they say, right? In the Talmud, something amazing they say. That a person who keeps the Shabbat, it's like he keeps the whole Torah. In other words, that brings him in. It's such a strong thing. When you keep Shabbat, it's like you keep everything, even though you don't keep everything. You're slack on this, you're slack on that. You're not 100%. They say, by the way, how far does this go? Can you imagine how far this goes? That a person, let's say, who does avodah zarah, he worships idols, idolater. He reads, these things, these idolatrous materials, all these kinds of things. This testament, that testament, the No Testament, New Testament, No Testament, right? Whatever, those things, right? So he reads all these things. He's an idolater. He believes in idols. But nevertheless, right, if he keeps Shabbat, really like the way he should, he's forgiven for that too. Can you imagine? They forgive him for that. It's an amazing thing. Can you imagine? The truth is that we don't have people like this today. We don't have people who on the one hand, are idolaters, and they keep Shabbat. This doesn't exist today. But in theory, if it did, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that would be right, exactly. We'll be forgiven for everything. So what do we see from there? That the mitzvah of Shabbat is something which it's all-inclusive, right? In other words, it's not just one little, right, point, one little, right, corner of the Torah. It's considered to be like, as if it's the whole thing. It runs the whole gamut. That's what it tells us, right? So if you keep Shabbat, it's like you're considered to be keeping the whole Torah. If you don't keep Shabbat, it's like you're breaking the whole Torah. Can you imagine? It also goes the other way around as well. Now, this is what the Talmud says, right? But this is a little bit hard to understand. What does that mean? The whole Torah, not the whole Torah. It's only one mitzvah, whatever. But the Rav Chaim Vital describes it, right, a little bit deeper, according to what he says over there in his book. What he's telling you is like this, right? This is in the introduction of that book, by the way. Introduction of this book. He writes over there that a person, because Shabbat is considered to be like the whole Torah, corresponding to the whole thing, so therefore, right, what happens is that when a person doesn't keep Shabbat, even if he does only one labor. This is also called not keeping Shabbat. So what happens is, right, that his whole body loses the nourishment from the holiness. Why? Because he's considered to be like he's breaking everything. Can you imagine? Instead of being sick in one limb, becomes sick in every limb. Lo alenu. This is what happens. So this is a very, very scary thing. So I ask you a question, right? If this is the case, this is really true, right? Then a lot of us should have problems, right? You know what I mean? You have a lot of problems.
Rabbi,
You know what I
get rid of the
mean?
demons.
Right. So then how are we living like that?
How can you get rid of these?
How are we alive?
Well,
What living zombies? What are we? You know what I mean? This is the question, right? So you know what the answer is? The answer is, right, that even though it loses the nourishment from the holiness, now it starts to get nourished from the unholy side. Understand? It takes from there. This is what happens. Once a person loses his Shabbat, he's now connected to the other side, you know? You take the cord, you take it out of here, you plug it over there. You know what I mean? The other side. That's where that's what he is, this person. He's not. So what does that mean? Once he gets connected to the other side, he gets nourished from there. So the truth is, right, that says the Rabbi Chital, that a person like this who's being nourished from that side, he's considered to be like dead. In other words, he's alive. If you look at him, he looks like he's living. You know, he's talking, everything. He walks, he runs, whatever. You know, everything. But he's considered to be dead. What does that mean? Because he's being nourished from that side, which is the bad side. It's like he died.
how serious?
It's a very, spiritually, in other words, we're talking about.
How serious?
Physically, he's alive.
How serious?
Spiritually, gone. Right? Now, why am I telling you all this, right? This is just an introduction to the idea. The truth is, right, that we talked about doing the 39 labors. There's a lot of details involved with this. What does that mean, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that a person did a certain labor that he transgressed Shabbat. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Even though he did one of these 39 labors, but the question is, right, it's not only what you do, it's how you do. Right, this is what I wanted to discuss. You know why? How did I get this all of a sudden in my head? Because there was a certain rabbi here, one of the local rabbis, who asked me questions about certain things. We have contact going on, right? What's up? This and that. What's up? So today, this was the question that he asked. The question was, right, that when a person does the labor in a certain way, so does that absolve him from the sin? And I told him, yes, it does. So what does that mean? That a person can do one of the 39 forbidden labors in a certain way, and he has no sin whatsoever. There is such a thing like that. Depends on how you do, not only what you do. So we have to understand a little bit what that means, right? To give you to give you an example, give you a few examples. We'll give you, right? For instance, one thing is like this, right? That a person, when he does the forbidden labor, it has to be that's his intention to do the labor. If he didn't intend to do the labor, but for some reason it came out like that, as an accident or whatever, he happened to he tripped over or something, whatever, something like this. It was not his intention to do that, but it came out like that. So is he liable for that? The answer is no, right? So what does that mean? If we call that in Hebrew eno mitkaven. It's not his intention. He doesn't want to do this labor. So what does that mean, right? That even though a person, by the way, doesn't have an intention to do the labor, sometimes, though, rabbinically speaking, he can be still liable for that. What does that mean? The rabbi said, even though your intention was not like that, but since it came out this way, and you kind of you knew that it was going to happen. In other words, it wasn't really your intention, but you know it's going to come out this way. I'll explain to you what that means, right? Let's say, for instance, the classic case, right? The rabbis use it like this. Let's say, for instance, right, a person says, listen, I want to take this chicken, right? And I'm going to put him into a machine, and I'm going to chop off his in the neck, whatever. The machine's going to chop off the neck. So, they say, right? Well, really the truth is, my intention is not to chop off his neck, but it's going to happen, you know what I'm saying? But so they're going to tell you like this, and you knew, right? In other words, your intention was to do something else over there. You had a different means, different ends over there. Your intention was you had a different intention. But you knew that in order to get this done, what you need to get done, the head had to be chopped off. So therefore, right, since this is called Pirkeh Avot, what does that mean? That means that a person doesn't really want that, but he knows that in order to achieve his goal, it has to happen. There is such a thing like that. So in a case like that, right, it's still forbidden according to rabbis, even though that wasn't really his intention to do that. So in a case like that, okay, fine. That's one thing, right? So according to rabbis, it's forbidden, this kind of thing. But now, right, we can go to a little bit deeper here. Right? As we said, one thing is, if it's not your intention to do the labor, so it goes down to rabbinical prohibition. But now, right, let's say you did also one more different thing, right? You did it in an abnormal manner. Abnormal manner. What does that mean? Right? The classic example would be like, let's say, for instance, a person was writing, so he usually writes with his right hand, and now he wrote with his left hand, and that's not usually the way he writes. He's not ambidextrous. He's not a lefty. You know what I mean? So if he did now two things, right? Number one is he didn't intend to do it. It wasn't his intention, and also he did it with a change, with a shinui, we call it kilach hayad, in an abnormal manner. So there it becomes totally permitted. You see? So a person can do two things. One is not to have the intention. The other one is also to do it in an abnormal way, and now it becomes all of a sudden permitted. I'll give you a classic case, right, of these kinds of things. For instance, let's say a person, right, is coughing, right? He has a cough. Nowadays, but when you have a cough, right, what do? We go to the store, we buy Robitussin, all these kinds of things, right? Medicines, right? But in those days, they didn't have these medicines. So what they did was, can you imagine? What they would do is, if the person had a certain cough, so he would go to, let's say it's Shabbat or it's Yom Tov, it's holiday. So in those days, you know what the remedy was? They used to go to the animal, right, to the cow, and they used to take the udder and suck out the milk, and the milk would improve the cough. It would alleviate you understand, the milk. So the question is a person allowed to do that on Shabbat? But the truth is you're not allowed to milk on Shabbat, right? A cow. This is one of the forbidden labors. It's called mefarek. You're removing the milk from the udder, right, from the breast, and this is not allowed to take out.
It's a medical need, though. That was medicine.
This is interesting, right? Okay, it's a medical need, right? But it's not going to die from it, right? It's not dangerous. He's not in danger. It's discomfort,
No, but not even that, Rabbi. The cows have to get milked every day.
It's very true what you're saying, right? Yes, it's very true. Otherwise, they get too much pressure. There are ways to alleviate this problem, by the way. They have also ways to do that. But regarding what we're talking about, right? So what does a person do? The Gemara says that a person who needs to take the milk out because of his cough, he's allowed to do that.
Because he's sick.
Yeah, it's true, but there's also other element over here besides that, right? Besides the fact that he's sick. So what's the other element over here, right? One is, you're right, he's sick. Number two, also, this is the abnormal way. What does that mean? A person doesn't usually go, right, with his mouth and suck out from the cow. You know what I mean? Right, exactly. This is not exactly something, this is the abnormal way. What would be the normal way? You take like something, right, a bucket, whatever, exactly like you said. That would be the. So therefore, right, since we have two different elements over here, we have the abnormal way, and we also have the fact, right, that he's sick. So here we do allow in such a manner like that. So what do we see from here, by the way? This is a big lesson. There's also, by the way, other proofs as well from the Talmud regarding this. So what do we see from here? There's two big Rishonim, two big rabbis who learned from this Gemara a very big principle. You know what they say? One of them is the Ran, one of them is Rashba. Two big Sephardi poskim, right, from Spain. So what they say is like this, right? You learn from these Gemarot that when a person does something in the abnormal way, it's not really called a labor at all. In other words, this is not the normal way to do the labor. So therefore, it's not called a labor. You know what I mean? And therefore, for a sick person, the rabbi said, or somebody who's suffering also, let's say he's not sick, just coughing, just has a cough. He's dry, suffering, He's not really sick, he's not bedridden, he doesn't have a flu. You know what I mean? Something like that. So a person in a case like this, because he has discomfort, so therefore the rabbis allowed him to do something in the abnormal manner, but if he would do this in the normal manner, he would be liable on that. You know what I mean? So what do we see from there? That the abnormal manner alters, right, altogether the labor into something else. It's not called a forbidden labor anymore. That's what we see, right? Something similar applies also, by the way, to telling a goy, right? For instance, what does that mean? That a person, let's say, who wants to do a certain labor on Shabbat, so he knows he can't do it by himself. So what does he do? He tells a goy to do it, right? Can you do it for me? light this for me, do this, do that for me, do this. Some people have like a goy like this who does all kinds of things for him. They have also in the shul, right? We have here in the shul also. We have a Shabbos goy. You know the Shabbos goy, right? The goy works in the shul, and he does all the forbidden labors that we're not allowed to do. He does them, more or less. This is the idea. You know what I mean?
Like confession.
So now, right? Also here, the truth is that we have a general principle in halakha. The principle is whatever you're not allowed to do yourself, you also cannot tell a goy to do it. So what does that mean? You cannot tell the goy, listen, drive me now to the shul. That you cannot do. But a little bit different, yes. What does that mean? Let's say I tell the goy, light for me the lights here, the fluorescents, right, or the LEDs. So that you're allowed to tell a goy to do. Why? What's the difference between this and that? Anybody have an answer? To drive you to the shul, you cannot tell him to do, right? But to light the lights for you, you're allowed to tell him to do. Why? So you know what the answer is? The answer is that driving a car is forbidden from the Torah. So whatever is forbidden from the Torah, you cannot tell a goy to do, according to most authorities. But whatever is forbidden from the rabbis, to light LEDs or to light fluorescents, right, things like this, you're allowed to tell a goy to do that. So why is that? Because telling a goy is also forbidden from the rabbis. And also, right, whatever he does is also forbidden from the rabbis. So it's two rabbinical. Ted Rabbanan, right? Shvut is shvut, that's what we call it. So therefore you're allowed to do it. So same thing also applies, right, in here, where a person does something in a different way, an abnormal manner, right? So therefore in a case like that, it's allowed to do it like that. For certain needs, right, for certain purposes. All the more so if it's the rabbinical, this prohibition. Then he's allowed to do, right? I'll give you an example, by the way, right? One of this guy who was just here now, right? Boria. So he once came to me six months ago, and he said, listen, I'm already having a problem coming to the shul. I can't walk down the stairs. He's an old man. He can't walk anymore so good, whatever, all these kinds of things. So he tells me, he says, listen, I want to come to the shul. So the question is, what do I do with the elevator? I can't walk downstairs. There's no such thing like that. So can I take the elevator on Shabbat? That was his question. So, I answered him. I said, listen, very simple, get a goy to just press the button for you. That's the doorman, Give the doorman, bring the doorman, give him a little whatever afterwards. Not on Shabbat, you cannot give him anything.
So it's inexcusable for a Jew, no matter how ill you are, how sick you are, how incapacitated you are, to press a button by yourself.
No, we're going to explain that right now. Right, so I told him, I said, listen, get a goy to do it. Bring a goy, ask him to press the button for you. He says, listen, I can't always get a goy. I don't have somebody like that. So then what do I do? So I told him, I said, you know what? Do in the abnormal manner. Oh, so now we come right to our solution. You know what I mean? What does that mean? That since the issue of taking an elevator is only forbidden from the rabbis, it's not forbidden from the Torah, taking an elevator. Why? How do I know that? Because the elevator works on electricity, right? Most issues of electricity most of them, I'm not talking about all of them, do not really have a forbidden labor from the Torah. Most issues of electricity. There are some that do. You know which one? For example, I'll give you an example, right? Let's say a person has a lot of guests on Shabbat, right? He has a big, kabal, he brings over there a big group, Jamaat, whatever. So he likes to have guests, they're singing together on Shabbat, beautiful, nice, Divrei Torah, blah, blah, blah. But who has to work, right? The man is sitting there singing and, having a good time, and all the wives are doing all the work, the kitchen, they're running around, this, that, all, serving, blah, 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 blah. So what happens is that afterwards, they also have to wash the dishes. Somebody's got to do it, right? Some men like to help their wives and to wash the dishes, but the Georgians are macho guys, they don't like to do these kinds of things.
Right.
So,
I washed the dishes, but
God bless you.
But it didn't get me.
Didn't get you far, right? Okay, I understand you. Yes, sometimes it's not appreciated. You're right. It's true. What can I tell you? So anyway, right? Whatever it is, it's hard. But when you have 10 guests coming over for Shabbat, I used to, when I was in Israel, we used to have a rabbi over there. One of my friends, he used to invite like 15 people on Shabbat every time. 15, guests. Big table.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Rabbi, goy, whatever. Anybody who does that to his wife on a constant basis does not love his wife. Okay. For him,
yes.
his wife.
Yes. He's a slave. He's a slave. Okay, I got you. I got you. But
And
there's
I'm
also
not the one to defend women.
Right.
Believe me. But
The truth is that there's a solution for that, David. I'll tell you what the solution is. The truth is, these people, this rabbi is a very good man. I know him.
I have no doubt.
He's a tzaddik, and also his wife is a tzaddiket. Also, his wife is a very good lady. He's top-notch people, top-notch. And they're doing a great service to the community by inviting people on Shabbat because they show them how it is, whatever it is. It's a nice big thing. I was there myself, by the way, for several Shabbat and several holidays. Had a great time over there, time of my life. So why do I mention this to you? Right? Because somebody, as we said, somebody's got to wash the dishes. Somebody's going to do all these things. Who's going to do all these things, right? One woman is going to do everything for 15 people. This is like, as you said, this is slave labor. That's what it is, right? So what do you do?
Disposable dishes.
That helps, right? But that doesn't solve all the problems, you know what I mean? That's one thing. But the truth is, to be honest with you, disposable dishes are great for many things in today, right? In today's life. But, exactly, it's not so, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know why? Because you want to honor Shabbat and you want to honor the holidays, right? You want to have the best dishes you have. Bring out karki servisi, beautiful servisi, gold, silver, this gold plated, all kinds of stuff. The Georgians are into this stuff. Mark, we're into this all this chukurtmevi, all kinds of stuff. You know how it is, right? So we like that stuff. But nevertheless, right, whatever it is that you're using, I'll tell you something. So because of this, by the way, regarding this rabbi, I just want to tell you, right, how did he accomplish all this? His wife wasn't working that hard. So how did he do it? They had a maid. They had a some Filipino lady or a Chinese lady, whatever, God knows whatever. Yeah, right. They had a maid.
Yeah.
Nice lady, whatever. Some Filipino, whatever. A lot of Israelis, you'll find a lot of those in Israel. They're working over there. They have a job, whatever. They're getting a job. They like it. They like to live there.
Marlon Brando also had a maid on the island, but then he had children with his maid. Everybody makes a mistake.
Right. So the truth is that the maid was doing a lot of the work. Baruch Hashem, very good. Everything is good. Also, the daughters help. There's a lot of daughters there. The family also helps.
As long as they're not married, it's okay.
We also, by the way, to be honest with you, we also used to help her. What does that mean? Even the men, we would each pick up our plates and put them in the kitchen. We also helped a little bit. Not too much, but we chipped in. That's also nice. It's nice gesture, whatever. To do put something. By the way, this is a good way to make your wife feel good a little bit. That you do something. Even though it's something like just not major, but just to show that you care. It's also it's a nice gesture to the wife.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a nice thing. It shows that a person has appreciation, consideration. Right? Nice thing to do.
It didn't get me anywhere, but I would still do it.
Yes, I understand you. Yeah, it's just a matter of mercy, to having mercy on people, to be a merciful person. Yeah, different story, right? That's a different lecture.
Mercy, me.
So getting back to what we said, right? What happens like this? Because of this issue, a lot of people, what they want to do on Shabbat? They want to use a dishwasher. What does that mean? The trick is like this, right? You set up the dishwasher with a clock, with a timer, right? You know how it is, right? You set it up, and then what happens is that you're going to have it turn on, let's say, like 10:30 at night, once the meal's over, whatever. So everything is on a clock. So all you got to do is, before that time, you got to put all the stuff inside. Then you close the door, right? Once you close the door, it will start by itself when the timer turns it on. Okay. You know what I mean? The door has to be closed. Otherwise, it won't go. You know that, right? That's the way they operate, dishwashers. So now over here, right? To use this with the timer, it's a little bit scary. You know why? Because over here, there's something which is prohibited from the Torah. Over here, it's not just electricity going on here. You know what it is? The water is being boiled to wash the dishes. It's being cooked. There's cooking going on there. This is the issue, right? So therefore, this is from the Torah. It's a little bit more complicated, right? This issue, not so simple, by the way, to allow such a thing like that. But when it comes to most electric devices, like air conditioners, and fans, and things like the electric heat, things like this, right? Which are from rabbinical issues, or elevators, as we said, all kinds of things like this. So things like this, a person is allowed to operate, right? As we said, either with a clock, the timer, or you can tell a goy to do these kinds of things, or you can also, as we said, right? There's the issue of doing it in an abnormal manner as well. So what did I tell Boria, right? Boria Bidzia, what did I tell him? I said, listen, if you can't find a goy to press a button, do it with your elbow. Or do a karate kick, do taekwondo, kick it, kick the button, right? Whatever, I don't know. it depends on how you if you're in shape or not, right? You can kick that good. You said they're accurate, right?
Did he take that seriously when you told him with the elbow?
Yeah, he took it seriously. Yeah, that's what he does. This was a practical question that he asked me. You know what I mean? So I told him, I said, yeah, that's what you can do. So what does that mean, right? That we find. This is a very good question, right? So here, right, the issue is like this with the car. By the way, if it was,
leave it running the day before.
if it was a what does it call it? Tesla. Yeah, then you'd be right. Electric car, yeah.
But with a town car, he said we could go like this with the steering wheel.
So what I mean. So the truth is that the car, because there's a fire in there, it's a little bit more severe. This is the problem. You know what I mean? Right? I understand you. But just to exactly combustion engine, the old ones, the ones that they're worried about, greenhouse effect, all kinds of things, right? They're talking about that now. In 12 years, the world is going to be, you know what they're saying, right?
Funny how Al Gore said the same thing, that everything was going to be underwater in 2012, and now she's saying in 12 years.
I want to tell you, by the way, something. You're talking about Al Gore. I remember something even older than that. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about 1976. You know what I'm talking about?
Who was it?
Can you guess what that was?
Jimmy Carter.
Ah, very good. He read my mind. Right? I remember when I was a kid. Right, Jimmy Carter came on the air.
The preacher.
Prime time, right. The peanut farmer,
He was a preacher.
Right, whatever. He preached a lot of things, a lot of falsehood. So what happened was that he came on the air next to the fireplace, the White House, the fire's going there, nice, beautiful, looks very presentable, nice sweater, wearing, must have been like a winter night, whatever. So he comes on the air, he says, we have to now start looking for other, sources of energy. Because he says, if we don't, he says, in 20 years, all the fossil fuels will run out already.
Yeah, right.
That's what he said. Can you imagine? Today we have Baruch Hashem. That doesn't seem to be realized. Right? His prophecy was not real.
Because it's not.
Understand?
Not a fossil.
So this is like all nonsense. You know how it is, right? It's all nonsense. Right? So
Then we had another one, Al Gore.
Right. Another.
Said if we pay him tax,
right,
he has an in with Mother Nature.
He should be in jail. Because not only did he make profit off of lies, they gave him an Academy Award for that stupid movie that he made.
That was a stupid movie.
I didn't know about that. I'm sorry.
I didn't even watch it.
It's
okay, whatever. So the point is like this, right? That we learn from here a very practical thing, that a person is allowed to do certain things in an abnormal manner, and this can, give him a lot of solutions in life. There's a lot of issues that can be dealt with. So, Baruch Hashem, we have solutions for many of the things that we need to solve problems on the issue of how to do Shabbat, how to do right Kaidre, the Yom Tov, right? All these things, the festivals. We have solutions for all these things. We have no problem, Baruch Hashem. We have everything. I want to talk a little bit also. Now the time this year, time of year, Sfirat Omer. When counting the Omer, the custom is to learn Pirkeh Avot. The ethics of the fathers. This book, So I want to tell you something a little bit from the ethics of the fathers, right? Which is something nice, right in the beginning, right? The ethics of the fathers, Pirkei Avot. You know what Pirkei Avot is considered to be? Which part of the Torah is that? Is it this part of the Torah? It's a Mishnah. That's what it is, right? It's the part of the Mishnah. So this Mishnah, by the way, is different from all the other Mishnayot, because usually the Mishnayot are talking about halakha, right? This is the topic of the Mishnah. But here, this is talking more about ethics, ethics of the fathers, ethics, musar, things which are more moral issues, or like something which is like beyond halakha, a little bit beyond, like saintliness or proper things, proper behavior, derech eretz, ziloba, all kinds of things like this, proper manners, like Pirkei Avot, So I want to tell you something interesting, right? That this book starts out in a very strange manner. How does it start out? The first thing it says like this, right? Not be a good boy, have good manners, when you eat right on the table, don't put your elbow on the table. It doesn't talk about that, right? Not talking about that. So what is it talking about? It talks about Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. That's what it says, right? What does that mean? You know what that means in Hebrew?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Wow, God bless you. Wow, such good boys. God bless you.
Now, guys, after we have matzah.
This is from Shalom. So it says, right, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. That's the first thing it says in Pirkei Avot. You know what that means? What does that mean? That Moshe acquired the Torah from Har Sinai, from Mount Sinai. That's what the first thing it tells you. What does it have to do with our discussion, right? Ethics of the fathers, derech eretz, diloba, good manners, morality. What does that have to do with that? What's the connection, right? And then it tells you, right? Umasar Yoshua. He got the Torah from Har Sinai. He gave it to Yoshua. He transmitted it to Yoshua. As we said, right, before we started the lecture, everything is documented. We know, right, from generation to generation, how the Torah got passed on. The Rambam, by the way, also describes, beyond what the ethics of the father says, he also describes what happened in the first temple, who the leaders were, how the Torah was transferred from one to the other. He talks about everybody, from one generation to the other. So what I'm telling you is like this, right, that it says Yoshua passed it on to who? Who did he pass it on to? To the elders, right? Who were the elders? These were the disciples, the leaders at that time that were with Yoshua, that learned from Moshe Rabbeinu, the elders, right? That's how it happened. So next, what happened after that? Then it went to the prophets, right? The prophets took it on from there. We're talking about people like this, like Eliyahu Navi, Elisha, right? Great prophets of each generation. Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, Ishayahu, right? Isaiah. These were the ones who passed on the tradition of the Torah from generation to generation. So it went from the elders to the prophets, right? And then it went from there to the Anshe Knesset Agdola. This was the final destination. What is in the talking about the second temple, right? This was called the men of the Great Assembly. Who was this men of Great Assembly? This was a big court, right? High court that existed in the time of Ezra when they rebuilt the second temple. There was 120 men who were sitting there. 3 of them were prophets, right? In that court. So the Torah was passed on to them. And the Rambam takes it from there, right? Tells you which generation, which rabbi took it on from there, so forth, so on. He describes everything. Where is this in the introduction to the Mishneh Torah? To his book, the Yad Chazakah. He describes over there each generation who took it on from there, who took it from there, who took it from there, each generation where it was taken. So, question is like this, right? What does this have to do with our discussion about ethics of the fathers? What's the connection?
Thank you.
You know?
Thank you.
So you know what the commentaries say, right? You know why? And also the other question, right? The first question, as we says, what does it have to do with our discussion? Number 2 is why put it in Dafka? Precisely in this Mishnah. Why not a different Mishnah? There's also right. You know how many Mishnah there are in the Talmud, right? There's 60 tractates of Mishnah, the Talmud. This is only one of them. So could you find a different place to put the information down? How we got the Torah from Har Sinai, from Mount Sinai, and it was passed on from generation to generation. Why did you put it over here with the ethics of the fathers? Also another question. You know what I mean? So what's the answer to these questions? You know what the answer is? That it's coming to teach you a big lesson over here. That when we got the Torah on Har Sinai, it wasn't only the halakha that we received, and the Kabbalah, and the Midrash, right? We also received this, right? Proper behavior, proper ethics, proper morality. This is also something we received on Har Sinai. So you shouldn't think that this must have come from who? Maybe this came from the rabbis, right? From their wisdom, they made up these things. They're sages, These sages, they have a lot of experience. They know about life. They know, right, about all kinds of practical things in life, how to behave properly and so forth. So from their wisdom, their logic, they took these things and put it into ethics. No! I'm sorry, this is not true. We got all this from Har Sinai. This also came from Har Sinai. Can you imagine? Even the ethics we got from there. So what do we see from there? That this is very much of one of the right essential elements of the Torah is also ethics. So we have to study this part of the Torah, right? This is also very important to study because otherwise a person can keep halakha, can keep be religious, but not behave properly. Doesn't behave properly, doesn't have the proper orientation, how he treats people, how he his outlook is distorted.
Talking about the guys in Brooklyn?
Well, Brooklyn is a big town, so I wouldn't want to put everybody in one category.
I would definitely agree with the statement.
That what?
How they behave in Brooklyn.
Well, it wasn't a statement, it was a question. Okay, I got you. Okay. Yeah, well, the truth is,
Not everybody,
that,
God forbid, but
yeah, not everybody, because the truth is,
99%. It's
in Brooklyn, to be honest with you, there's a lot of good people over there. In
oh,
Brooklyn.
absolutely.
You would be surprised, by the way, how much diversity there is in Brooklyn. How many communities are there? You know, it's. To be honest with you, Brooklyn is one of the most amazing places we have in America.
Mm.
You know, because there's a lot of tradition over there. There's a lot of it's a very I mean, to be honest with you, we we in Queens, don't compare to Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, they can sweep us under the floor, under the rug. We're not on that level.
You're talking about in general? Or?
Yeah, the Brooklyn has bigger rabbis there, bigger scholars. We're not in Queens. We're like novices, compared to them.
Why? We had the Ramones. We had the two guys from Kiss. They were Jewish.
Ah, God. They were. They were. Okay. Okay. I was just wondering. They said they were. So does that mean they still are, or they were?
He still is.
Okay. Okay, I got you. So, you understand what I'm saying? Nevertheless, so what do we have to learn from here? The ethics, proper behavior, musar, proper manners is a part of the Torah. Right? So what does that mean? That a person, right, doesn't behave properly. What are the main elements of behaving properly, right? Tends to get angry, bad temper he's got, When he gets heated up, starts to yell, scream, blah, 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 The whole, the smoke is coming out.
Most Georgians are disqualified. We should all
Yes. Okay. So you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? The sages tell us, right? The anger is one of the biggest problems of proper manners. Also, we have the attribute of gava, right? What does gava mean? Arrogance, right? Haughtiness, right? But now the truth is they have a different word now they're using, which is like in fashion. You know what it's called? Narcissist, right? Narcissism. So what is a narcissist? Right? I looked at the definition of this word. I wanted to know, right? Because they call the president,
Chuck Schumer.
They call president like this name, I don't agree with that, by the way. I personally don't agree with it, but
because you love him.
But it's not for no reason I love him, because he behaves good. He's a good man. God bless him,
I used to.
According to his, so narcissism. You know what it means? It's a person who's full of himself. He has like an exaggerated,
self-centered,
right,
egoistic man.
right, exactly. Yeah, that's
person
it.
who is in love with himself.
Right, exactly. Love himself.
That's
We had this friend, right? We when we were growing up, and he used to say, "Oh, I'm the best, and I'm this, and this is like narcissist procedure." You understand? I'm the best. I'm the most successful. He used to tell us this. I'm the best. You should know. I'm the best. Nobody like me. This is a narcissist. So that
with him, I know you bring it as an example because we both love him. Till this day. I think he was raised improperly. I think he heard this at home.
I think it's more than that, to be honest with you. I think it's more like also it's a personal issue, because it's something which a person has inside of him, whatever. So a person who has this problem with narcissism, he has to work on that,
It's a sickness.
Yeah, it really is a sickness. It really is. It is an illness. But how far the sages go regarding this? What they say about a person who's like that? Narcissist? They say, right, it's considered to be like he's an idol. He made an idol out of himself.
What if you can't?
It's like Avodah.
What if you can't help yourself?
You have to help yourself. Nobody's beyond help.
That's why you're sick.
See, the reason that Hashem gave us the Torah...
You freak out. You don't mean problem. I get angry. I freak out.
The reason that Hashem gave us the Torah is to work on ourselves.
Right.
So nobody's beyond repair.
Don't get me angry. I won't get angry.
That's the idea, right? So the truth is, right, that narcissism, which is called gava, that's what we call it in Hebrew, a person who has this trait, you know what it says about him? To'avat Hashem kol gevah halev. Something amazing. Where does it say this? You know where it says this? In Shlomo Melech, right? King Solomon. He says this in Mishlei, right? In Proverbs. Every person who has gava in his heart, right? Arrogance like this, he's abominable to a God. God looks at him and he says, "I can't look at you. And when I look at you, I get sick." That's how bad it is. You understand? I can't dwell with you. You understand? In other words, you fill up the room with your narcissism. I'd have no room to dwell within the same room with you. I can't be there. There's no room. You fill up the whole room with your gava. You're self-centered.
It's not only God.
You understand?
That with people also when
they can't stand it, right? Nobody can stand it.
It's difficult to put.
So we see from there, by the way, that these kinds of sicknesses, one of them is the anger problem. We all have this problem. Moshe Rabbeinu also had this problem. Anger, he also got angry. Each one on his level. We have to work on that. We can't say, oh, I was born that way. This is like when a person starts to talk this way, that's the way I was born. That means you don't want to work on yourself. You want to be like a Christian. That's the way I am. That's who I'll stay. I was born a gambler. I was born this. I was born this.
I've never seen you get angry. So one trait, you already.
Good.
Yes, I've never seen. Even when somebody gets in his face,
I get angry, but.
And goes Trump this, Trump
right,
that.
Right,
he goes
doesn't lose it. Doesn't lose it.
No, this guy went up to him and and said, "You're gonna build this up your hand," because he kept going on a rant. The wall is going. This was Mark. You're a loser. You're a loser. You lost, and you're gonna lose again 2020. But he never gets out of line. He never gets angry. You never see him getting angry.
So a person has to work on these traits. But the truth is, that this is considered to be these two things, anger and the narcissism, They say, right, the Chazal, the person who has these problems, we're talking about an acute manner, like very extreme. He gets angry every day, or every day he's talking about how great he is, telling people. We also, by the way, to be honest with you, we're talking about our childhood, right, issues, but there was also here somebody who was coming here, I don't want to mention his name, right? When I had private audiences with him, he used to tell me all the time, I'm the smartest, I'm the most talented, why do you tell me these things? Why do you come to me and talk to me about these things? It makes me want to, excuse me, but it makes me sick. I mean, I want to.
You are great.
Can you point out to us?
You can figure it out on your own, right? The narcissism is a very big problem, But Kadosh Baruch Hu says to a person like that, I can't dwell in the same place with you. There's no room for me, You don't let me dwell anywhere. I don't have an inch in the room for you to be with you.
What if you keep going around all your life saying I'm a loser?
That's also not good, You accuse yourself, right?
Like that?
Yeah, I remember very well. Believe me, I remember very well. Oh God, So this is also not good, So what should a person consider himself? He shouldn't consider himself like a loser, but he shouldn't also consider himself to be like the best and the most handsome and most talented, Just be normal, like what, just a normal.
I don't know how we put up with that, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how we put up with it. Because I remember you calling me once.
Yeah.
David, you were right, like I was hanging out with him today and he just destroyed me, so I just had to walk away. You remember you came to me one day?
I trust you.
Yeah.
Whatever. So, Rabbi, we learn from something amazing over here, from Pirkeh Avot, that all these things are also from the Torah, all these things. Not to be angry, not to have arrogance, narcissism, right? All kinds of things like this. And the truth is,
it brings friction.
Chazal tell us, the Chazal tells us that a person who has an acute problem with these things. Some people have an acute problem, Every day you see them, they lose it, they get angry, something falls out of the refrigerator, they start to yell. What happened? Just something fell. The sour cream fell out of the fridge. Why are you yelling for what? What are you yelling about? What happened?
Rabbi, what is the worst case of narcissism that you've heard? From us growing up, about what you're talking about. Has he ever told you, because he used to tell me all the time, and this is comical, that he would tell me I made more money today than most people wish they could make all
this is a classic case. You know what I mean? We're talking, right?
And he would classic case on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Yes.
A lot of people like this.
Yes. So Rabbi, what that means is that a person has to develop his character traits. He has to work on that too. It's part of the Torah. That's what we learn from Pirkei Avot. That everything is from Har Sinai. Everything is from Mount Sinai. A person has to work on these things too. So we'll stop here, Brother Hashem. Next time we'll pick it up on Tuesday. God bless you. Thanks for coming. We're just getting warmed up.
I was watching.
Just getting warmed up.
I was watching the story.
All the blessings to all of you. I'm sorry.
Jimmy,
I was watching the story.
I can imagine.